Hello, Americans. I'm Kent McNall, and it's Constitution time for this Tuesday, October 20th, 2020, 10/20/2020. Exactly 2 weeks before what is probably the most consequential election that we have seen yet. I made a boo-boo today when I sent out the link for the meeting. I sent the wrong link. I sent the link for yesterday. So we might have a few folks watching yesterday's show, but hopefully they'll meander in. I'm going to have to give myself one of these. But I'm still happy to be coming to you from Studio B here at McNall Studios, and that's a new camera angle for you. Uh, Having a little bit of fun with the tech. I was thinking today about I'm very proud. I've been getting some email from people that are watching, and I love that, and I'm really proud that there are people from both sides of the aisle that are watching and enjoying the show and learning from it. I really appreciate that because I know that not every word I say feels to everybody like it's completely objective and nonpartisan, even though I intend for it to be. We're in a situation that I feel requires action, and the action that may be required to get our democracy out of trouble is not necessarily going to make everyone happy. But one thing I have grown to believe is that back in 2016, after that election, when we saw some unusual behavior during the election, after the election from the executive, I know that I was one, and I think many others were as well, that thought this will go away. Our new executive is not a politician. He's not used to this stuff. Um, and many didn't want him to be become just a politician, but we definitely were stunned by some of the behavior and felt that it would change over time. And it's kind of gone the other direction. I think some people are still thinking that I'm still going to vote this way and it will be okay somehow. But I think for our Constitution and for our democracy, I'm not sure that that's true. A lot going on. Supreme Court of the United States made a ruling today about Pennsylvania's election. Pennsylvania's Supreme Court had made a ruling on the ability to count votes X number of days after the election was over. And the Supreme Court took the unusual step of taking up that case that had been filed by one of the parties. Usually, state elections, the cases stop with the state's Supreme Court, and it was unusual for the national Supreme Court to take that up. And a lot of people were looking at that case as a possible harbinger of what might happen as other cases come in. The Supreme Court sent, basically with a 4-4 decision, did not uphold, what was being asked. So, no decision. It stays with the state Supreme Court. And Chief Justice John Roberts actually weighed in with the Democrats, as he has a few times. And a couple of the other justices have as well, Gorsuch, on at least one occasion. We might not be seeing that for a while now, with a new Supreme Court justice joining the court, apparently, and in time to hear election-related cases. That's just one of many things that will happen after the election, and that's kind of the topic for today. I have to tip my hat to our Supreme Court's Chief Justice, because I know, in my heart, I've always believed that if a big imbalance were to occur on the Supreme Court, that the court would rebalance itself to at least not be completely tipped one way or the other. I don't know that will happen with Clarence Thomas and Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and now Barrett. joining Justice Roberts in the majority, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of leeway with those other four. So it's going to get very interesting if that in fact happens. If we have a 6-3 imbalance on the court at a critical time. But at least for today, that election issue got sent back, and the state's desire to be able to continue to count after the election was upheld. Okay, so the topic for today is, so it's election day, and the election has happened. What's going to happen after that? That may be the time that we who are contemplating these things have to really make a decision. Well, now what do we do? What are we willing to do? What are the options for us to do? But I'm not so much going to talk about is what we should do if this or this or this happens. But I am going to talk today about what is this or this or this, at least is what I see coming. So I think there's 4 possible scenarios of what happens on election day. And let me first say what happens with the election, okay? Because the election day is not election day. It'll be election week probably to get all the counting done. Because of COVID and because of the extraordinary things that are happening to get around COVID, but also because of a lot of strange things that are going on with the voting, and a lot of people are voting. So there's a lot of strain on the system, regardless of anything else that happens from on high. So scenario number 1, the incumbent executive wins in a landslide. That may be, in one way, not a great thing to happen for the country, but in another way, that scenario probably has the least amount of constitutional weirdness in terms of the election itself. We still have all of our other issues that I've laid out, and probably far extent, but at least from a controversy over the election that's just about the voting and the election itself, not about any manipulation. And I'm going to rewind this a second and say what happened in 2016 is a little bit different from what was happening now in 2020. In 2016, about this anymore, but in a bipartisan fashion, the Senate and the Congress have told us that yes, the election was interfered with. The Senate Intelligence Committee came out with a huge report. I only know one person that's read the whole thing, but I've read parts of it, and the person that I know that read the whole thing assures me that yes, absolutely, that committee on the Senate, in a bipartisan fashion, led by the Republican Party, said, no question, our election was interfered with by Russia. And Russia used the weapons of mass persuasion that I talked about, which is social media, to not directly interfere with voting, but to get in people's heads and change their mind on how they wanted to vote if they voted. That's at least my interpretation. I think that it was less about direct interference with voting itself. Well, in 2020, we have that still going on. All of our intelligence agencies have told us that. But now we also have people in the administration, people in state governments directly threatening the vote itself, threatening the election itself, saying they're going to do things that have never been done before, saying there will be no peaceful transition of power, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a big twist in this. So scenario number 1 is the incumbent wins in a landslide election, and we don't have a lot of the other issues that I'll now talk about. Scenario number 2 is the challenger wins in a landslide election. And I think that in that scenario, we again don't have quite as much weirdness as we'll have in scenarios 3 and 4, because I think that while the executive may attempt to do things that have, again, have never been done before, that are not constitutional, to keep power, the support the executive will have even within his own administration and other branches of the government will probably be pretty thin. Much a danger. It'll be messy. It'll be very messy. And I would hope that there, obviously everybody hopes there would not be violence, that kind of thing, but it's not unlikely. If he's inciting it, it could happen. But in the end, we'll get back to the winner of the election will take office. Scenarios 3 and 4 are the messiest. One or the other of the two candidates wins in a narrow, contested way. And in that scenario, we have the most protracted situation, the thing that can draw out the longest, and we also have probably a lot of unrest and a lot of difficulty. And with COVID going on at the same time and mega peaking from what everyone is saying at the same time, and the economic uncertainty that is certainly going to happen as part of that with the market, it's going to be a heck of a thing. And without question, in scenarios 3 and 4, the incumbent executive will be using all the power of government to try to keep any result other than the one result that he desires from happening. And so I personally am hoping for a landslide. I'm hoping for the least potential to have the election directly meddled with, influenced, one way or the other, by our own government. And I'm sure that everyone would join me in that particular desire. So this could go on for a long time, especially scenarios 3 and 4. Just in 2001, I believe that it took a month for the Supreme Court to weigh in and decide the election with the, hanging chads in Florida and all that type of thing. And one of the things that is almost without question going to happen in scenarios 3 and 4, and possibly even just in scenario 2, Joe Biden, the challenger wins by a landslide, is that the court will get involved, and the court could weigh in such a way that the perception is they're deciding this election in a partisan fashion. I think that also will be an incredibly difficult moment for our country and for our Constitution and for our democracy. And the question we'll all have to ask ourselves then is, what are we going to do about it? What are we willing to do about it? And it's not like the conversation we had yesterday where we can send some money to a campaign. There's no campaign. The government doesn't need any money from us. You can say that again. So I think that we'll, how at that point, how really involved do we want to get? I can certainly see myself heading to D.C. My wife just heard that for the first time. So, interesting chicken dinner after this. But I do believe that we'll all at that point really have to roll up our sleeves and figure out, how do we make our voices heard? How do we preserve our democracy and our Constitution and not let it get rolled under because we let ourselves get into a bad situation? And I think also at that point that some of the very, very fine people that I know, who I still think might be telling themselves, this will level out somehow. It can't, this isn't real. We'll get back to some kind of normalcy. We'll have to face that and really decide for themselves, do we still believe that? Do we still believe that this is okay? Because that's not going to be okay, folks, in my opinion. So from a timeline perspective, this starts pretty much on day one of Election Day. The first thing I think will happen is that who, whoever's ahead on election day will probably be trying to claim victory on election day. But I think this election, more than any other, may not be decided on election day, especially if it's as close as it appears it may be. It's probably going to take several days, even with nobody doing anything wrong, to decide the election and really try to figure. Well, here's who we say won. Here's who we believe won. Here's who the count says won. But I strongly suspect that even from day one, claims could be made that I'm the winner, and let's get the wheels rolling on all this other stuff to make sure that that doesn't change. So past that, boy, it's hard to say what the timeline will be and how long it could take. The Constitution says that on a certain day in January, there will be a new president, even if the president has to be selected by the Congress, which is a lot of weirdness with that. That'll probably end up being a conversation here on Constitution time, because it's not as simple as just saying, oh, it's Congress, so the party in charge of Congress, gets to decide. It doesn't work that way. Talk about that another time. I'm really excited about tomorrow evening's show because for the first time here on Constitution Time, we're going to have some guests. And we're going to have a very, very interesting conversation about the Electoral College, which is A, the thing that really, truly decides the election, B, potentially subject to manipulation in this election, and C, will almost certainly end up in front of the Supreme Court if anything weird goes on. So I hope that you will join us for that. Join us live. And as I promised, I'm going to see if we have any chat going on. I don't think I see any, and I'll be lucky if anybody actually made it here since I sent out the wrong link. Don't see any. So, folks, I apologize to anybody who tried to get the show and got yesterday's show. Hopefully you'll find this one as well. And I thank you for joining us, whether you're doing it live or after the fact. And we will see you right here tomorrow on Constitution Time.